All right, top 10 worst head coaches in football. Who are the head coaches you don't want to be running your team? Let's just get into it. Starting off with number 10, who I actually don't even think is a bad head coach necessarily. Matt Eberflus is going to be here at, Eberflus, I believe is how you say it actually, is going to be here at number 10, I don't think he's a bad head coach. I wasn't annoyed with his rookie year or anything like that, rookie head coach year. I mean, okay, the Bears did finish with the worst record in football, but look who the Bears had. I mean, yeah, they were going to finish with the worst record in football. I thought he did some nice things with sort of midway through the season, kind of, playing to Fields' strengths a bit more and really helping develop Fields and unlocking the most that you can unlock from Fields. I thought that was very good. It's kind of everything else is more of a to be determined with Eberflus, but again, I don't think he's a bad head coach. I don't think there's 10 bad head coaches. So I kind of had to look at the guys who I didn't consider bad head coaches, but maybe that weren't overly impressed with either, and figure out, okay, well, who belongs on the list? Who can I put on the list? There has to be 10 head coaches, and so that's why he made the list. Is simply just the results there got him at number 10, but he's only at 10. I couldn't put him higher than that. Number 9, DeMeco Ryans, again, simply just due to we haven't seen him head coach before, and who knows with this stuff, and that's why we're going to see all three, spoiler alert, the next 3 picks are all going to be rookie head coaches for that very reason, but he is my favorite of the rookie head coaches. Guys, that coach for Shanahan tend to work out pretty well, so I would bet on him having success, but, we have to see it first, so that's why he's at 9. Number 8, Shane Steichen. I should learn how to say that name. But Shane S. Formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was also a coordinator for the Chargers, the offensive coordinator when Justin Herbert was developed, and I do think that he did some nice things with Herbert. I mean, at least some nice things were done with Herbert. I think a lot of good stuff happened with Justin Herbert being able to, I think that there were some mechanical issues in Herbert's game coming out of college that were fixed. I don't know if that was because of him or not, but that's definitely reason for optimism. Obviously, he's there when Hurts takes that next big step as well. And so for Indianapolis, who now has Anthony Richardson, I'm sure that they're hoping that he can do that as well for them. Then we have Jonathan Gannon, who, again, trying to decide between these guys. The reason why I put him as the worst of the new head coaches that have never coached before, the reason why I put Gannon here is, defensive coordinators, I tend to not love those hires, as a lot of times defensive, minded head coaches tend to make decisions that help their defense instead of help their offense when it's an offensive league. You should go for it on 4th down and 3, right? Stuff like that. Although he's from out of the Philadelphia system where that's what they did was play very aggressively. So maybe he could do that as well, and it won't be as big of an issue. Did not have the best final game in Philadelphia with the defense getting torched, but I don't know how much of that was actually his fault, even though he got plenty of criticism for it. Another guy who's had success, several different ways. I think I don't have an issue with all these coaching hires, but again, haven't seen it yet, so you're at number 7. Number 6, I am going Kevin Stefanski here, which is, again, maybe a bit of a hot take. Maybe I could have put him, I think on the list is fine. 6 feels high to me, and I'm the one who made the list. Personally, he is someone who's won a Coach of the Year, but I just don't know how much. I feel like when he won the Coach of the Year, it was pretty much just like, hey, this is the talent. It's almost like, I don't know, putting a square peg in a square hole is what he did for winning Coach of the Year. Yes, you give him credit. A lot of guys don't do that. Freddie Kitchens certainly didn't, but I kind of felt like he got maybe more credit than he deserved for it, in my opinion. And now we've seen him just be a solid, fine head coach. I don't think that you're mad about having him as your head coach necessarily, but I do feel like there's been some issues, and I just haven't been overly impressed with many of the X's and O's over the course of his entire career, really. Just kind of a fine, maybe, sort of a bland head coach more than anything. So number 6 on my list. Not top 5, but is here at 6. Number 5 is a guy who I actually have been at times very impressed with X's and O's wise, Frank Reich, who I think that, again, has had some great moments, in the NFL. He made the Phillip Rivers thing work, made the playoffs with Phillip Rivers, although, how much blame does he deserve for kind of the issues that have, happened later on? Some, again, his mindset and the way that he coaches football is just not necessarily the way that I would coach football if I was a coach. We have different, mindsets on that kind of thing of his, loves to run the ball, run play action, these short routes and stuff like that, which, listen, have had success at times. He did win a Super Bowl in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator. So definitely there is some, great stuff with Reich. But again, the guy just got fired last year. So I think putting him top 5 on the list is fair, although we'll see how it goes, next year. Number 4, I'm going Brandon Staley, who I don't really hate the way other people hate, but I definitely don't really get what he's doing. I mean, year 1, when he first entered the league, I was actually having a lot of fun with Brandon Staley. I totally got what he was doing, even if it wasn't, always working. I feel like it usually was, where the analytics going for it, if it says go for it on 4th and 1 at your own 19, then he went for it on 4th and 1 at his own 19. I liked that stuff, and I thought that his defensive coaching was interesting. When he was with the Rams as the defensive coordinator, he played a lot of quarters coverage, which meant that it's very easy to run the football against, but they had Aaron Donald, so it didn't really matter. With the Chargers, he kind of tried to do this again, but they don't have Aaron Donald, so then the running game is constantly, they're giving up a ton of yards, but I still felt like that was an interesting strategy. Give up stuff through the ground, because at least this way you're not giving up stuff through the air, and that's still an effective strategy and still maybe a good thing to do. Then this past year, it seemed like he went away with some of that stuff, and I guess they made the playoffs this year, but again, it felt like they didn't live up to their potential and haven't lived up to their potential, so we'll see if they finally do live up to their potential or not. But again, as a team that I feel consistently underperforms what they should be performing, I think putting him number 4 on the list is fair. Number 3 is Josh McDaniels, which, listen, legendary offensive coordinator, no one's going to argue that, but we've seen now multiple, this is his second trip as a head coach, so it didn't work in Denver, and I thought that with the Raiders, they underperformed expectations. They went from a playoff team to a team that picked 7th overall. That is a pretty big step back, especially when you added Devontae Adams. You should have moved forward, not backwards. And again, some things were outside of his control. The talent did take steps back in ways that weren't his fault as well, of course, but for a team that consistently underperforms, and I've very rarely been impressed with his head coaching abilities, the X's and O's and things like that. I don't know. He's definitely kind of an old school mindset as well, which I don't know if that works in 2023. So not a fan of McDaniels. Number 3 on the list. Number 2 is a guy who, I couldn't put him at number 1, and you could maybe talk me into him being a little bit lower on the list, like number 3 or number 4, but still, Todd Bowles makes the list. I still think about the fact that, listen, you have Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and even some other nice pieces on offense, and you had one of the worst offenses in football. Bowles is not an offensive-minded head coach. He's, defensive-minded, and that's what saves him, and that's why he's not number 1, and that's if you're, you could argue he shouldn't be this high on the list because of how good his defensive X's and O's are, which are great. They're legitimately great, and there's a ton of value in that, and they're still great even as a head coach. But the offense was just there's no way it should have been that bad. There's no way it should have been one of the worst offenses in football with Tom Brady and all those talent. That's not how it should work. I know that there were offensive line injuries. The offensive line was still fine enough that they should have been at least a good offense last year. Maybe you don't get to be the elite offense you were in years past, but I mean, this is a team that was they won a Super Bowl. They then won as many games as anybody else in the league the following year, and lost to the Super Bowl winner on a last-second field goal. And then they became a team that couldn't even go 500, made the playoffs due to a weak division, and got crushed once they got there. That's a pretty massive step back. And some of the game management stuff was just awful. I mean, he had one situation against Cleveland where, Cleveland, so the way it was set up, Cleveland had, I believe, only one timeout left, maybe even no timeouts left. But the way it was set up is that if Tampa Bay got the ball, they could just knee out the clock and the game would be over. There was under 2 minutes left in the game. The Browns were down 8 points or 7 points, but they were down in the game. So for Tampa Bay, all you have to do is call your timeout, save as much time as possible. If Cleveland scores a touchdown, well then you have a chance to go down the field and try to score points of your own. If Cleveland does not score a touchdown, well, you win anyway. So there's no reason to not do that, but Todd Bowles didn't do it because that's just not how Todd Bowles really thinks. All of the 4th down and 1 punts and stuff like that. Again, one of those coaches, like I talked about earlier, that he is the epitome of the guy who coaches to help out his defense, which typically means that you eventually lose football games just slower. But number 1, I did give the honor or the dishonor to Dennis Allen, who, again, maybe it could turn around. We'll see. I do like Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator a lot. I think he's a great defensive coordinator, but I do feel like what separated him and Bowles to me is that Bowles, at least you could hang back, go back onto, well, his defensive coaching was still very good. The defense was very good for Tampa Bay, had some awesome games, and had some great X's and O's in that one. I thought that Dennis Allen, I think that when he tried to use some energy on other stuff and didn't focus as much on defense, it hurt the defense, and the defense wasn't as good either, along with the offense being nowhere near Sean Payton levels and some questionable decision making and game management stuff as well with Dennis Allen. That is why I decided to put him at number 1 on the list. But yeah, that's my top 10. What is yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.